London, we have the highest rate of child poverty in the country. It's most high in the centre, but as you get to the outer London areas, it is still very high compared to the rest of the country.
Quasi nessuno vive, no, in realtà nessuno vive al centro.
We're seeing a gradual migration of the poorest families from the centre to the outer suburbs of London.
The centre of London is the financial capital of this country and probably the world. And so it's a very rich place. But that does not reflect what happens in other parts of London. And so in London you have places that are very, very rich, and then you have places that are very deprived. For a place like Tottenham, where we are, it's a very deprived place. There's a lot of unemployment, hardship here, very difficult circumstances for people.
No sé si decir soledad o algo, o individualismo, no sé qué es, ¿no? Me parece. O no hay tiempo, quizás. La gente no tiene tiempo, el día es muy corto, la gente corre de un lado a otro.
People who are living in the poor areas, it's almost as though you wouldn't really be living in London. A lot of people that we've met and that we've talked to have never actually been into the centre of town, so have never been to the big tourist areas like Westminster, haven't seen the Houses of Parliament, haven't seen Big Ben, the London Eye, or any of the places which a lot of people take for granted, like Oxford Street, for example. They feel very isolated in northern London.
There is a big difference in London between the wealthy and the poor. You find them in London living very close side by side in the same neighbourhoods, but despite that you can find that their lives can be almost entirely segregated from each other. In an area like where we are here in Islington, there are a lot of very wealthy families who many of whom are going to be sending their children to private schools rather than the local state schools. And those children will not be using the same local authority services where there is provision for things like youth recreational activities.
And now the government brought back the scheme about the loan concession. So the children who came here as minors, and after 7 years they're still minors, until 2007 they qualify for settlement. And now the new regulation introduced this rule, but now they have to wait another 10 years to qualify for settlement.
I'm very much aware of the rise and what happened, because I work with young people in Tottenham. I run a youth club at Bruce Grove Youth Centre in Tottenham here, and I've been working with young people for 17 years, providing supplementary education, youth clubs, running a youth TV talk show called Keep It Real. So I've been working with young people for a long time, and so I know what is happening in the system as far as young people are concerned. But at the moment, the rights, everything looks calm, but actually there is tension underneath the calm. The people are still angry. People still feel that they are not getting what they feel they are entitled to. The young people are still angry. Their circumstances haven't changed at all. There is still high unemployment. They can't find jobs. They are desperate. There's overcrowding in their homes. They can't move out. Parents can't buy property for them to move into bigger houses. You know, they are crammed in small places, and all these things are bringing pressure. Parents are losing their jobs, and there is tension at home. They can't provide for their children, and the educational system and everything.
Brixton is a very diverse part of London. We see many, different migrant communities that live here in Brixton. So, as well as this diversity, there is different food and different, races and, but there's a lot of crime as well, because we're talking about the most disadvantaged communities in London. So there's also crime, there's gangs, there are there is poverty, properties are not equipped as they should be, schools are full.
Another problem we are facing now is the lack of places in the schools and in colleges. Even with people, documented people, we have many parents have to leave these children alone in their rooms.
There are more people seeking for advice in terms of immigration advice and in terms of social welfare, employment. There's many people unemployed. There are many people facing housing issues. So rather than having more funding because of the number of people that we see now, we have less funding and we have a broader part of the community who come here to seek for advice.
Been forcing poorer groups out of London increasingly, except for where there is social housing. But social housing is becoming reduced in scope. More and more people are being moved into private accommodation. And now with the housing benefit reform, so people getting less money or less subsidised housing, it's forcing people to move out of the centres of London to the suburbs. So even places beyond Haringey, which many would see as almost being suburban in many respects, to further north in places like Enfield, for example.
So this is creating quite a big deficit, a kind of democratic deficit, if you like, in terms of the services that people need to access the support to keep them an active and involved part of the mainstream of society.
And a lot of professionals came here, but even in Spain they couldn't work.
La maggior parte delle persone, dei beneficiari che noi aiutiamo a IRMO finiscono col lavorare nel cleaning service, quindi come cleaner. E questo non riguarda soltanto le persone con un livello di educazione basico o con meno pretese. Questo riguarda anche persone che hanno un livello di educazione più alto, persone anche laureate. In genere sono più lavori.
Ahora estoy trabajando en una empresa de limpieza. Bueno, a veces también hago algo que es mi profesión, ¿no? Que es lo que sería handyman, ¿no?
E molto spesso vengono al corso di inglese che noi organizziamo e si addormentano proprio perché hanno lavorato tutto il giorno, oppure lasciano il corso perché hanno trovato l'ennesimo lavoretto part-time che li porta da una parte all'altra di Londra e quindi non possono più permettersi di seguire assiduamente il corso.
Aquí se trabaja. Aquí no hay como en España, que allá en España se pelea por las 40 horas y no puedes trabajar más de las 40 horas.
Most of them are living overcrowded. A house was designed for 2 people to live there. 10, 15 persons are living, especially with children. It is very, very difficult and it's getting worse.
Austerity measures on homelessness in London is going to be quite complicated, but what we're looking at the moment is a situation where growing numbers of families in particular are finding that they're unable to meet, or will be unable to meet, as of April 2013, their rents. Where they can't meet rents, they're going to start getting into rent arrears where they're growing more and more money that will be owed to their landlords, and where that happens, most of them will eventually become homeless, and they can become statutorily homeless, which means that the local authority or the local government has to house them. What this means is you'll find people in very unstable forms of accommodation.
One of the first guys who came to this place was an alcoholic with a liver problem. We took him to hospital. We used our church as the address for him to be registered, because in this country, if you don't have an address, you can't have a doctor.
It's difficult to predict what the real impact of austerity is going to be over the long term, but it does seem likely that it's going to widen differences between social groups, particularly inequalities between different groups. I think what we're likely to see is growing inequality between people who need state assistance, so people who are on benefits, for example. And then just above them, there's a group of working poor who are likely to slip into growing situations of precarity or precariousness, and then at the top, potentially, rising wages. So whether or not we'll be seeing the disappearance or the gradual reduction in the size of the middle classes in Britain and London, I think that's a potential outcome of fiscal reform when you add in things like the global recession. And wider structural forces to the UK labour market and to the London housing market.
Domani c'è un altro appuntamento in un altro ristorante, ma questo ristorante è da 5 stelle. Magari io, tutto va bene, io il posto, vediamo.
Y buscarme la vida como tú dices.